Welcome back, everybody. Can you believe we are already on episode 4 of our Magnum OPUS podcast? It's going to be a month birthday for us coming up soon. But today, I have the absolute pleasure of welcoming Mr. Scott Mitchell to the show. Wonderful TA for what seems like 3 decades of work. He is joining me, and really, I'm super excited because he's the first TA that I've had the pleasure to interview. But he is like a wealth of knowledge in all things IT based. So I'm really excited to sit down and talk with him. So welcome, Scott.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Like you said, it's been a long time with Opus. So it's good to like sit down and talk about it a little bit. So thanks for doing this.
Always. Well, I got a couple questions for you, and if the conversation kind of devolves into your dog or today's life, I think it'd be totally fine.
I'm sure I'll mention my dog.
So first of all, thanks for being here again. Can you tell me a little bit about your background as a musician? Even if it's not something you're currently pursuing now, maybe when you first started playing, how you got introduced to the violin. I gave it away, but what your primary instrument is, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, totally. So actually, my first instrument was piano when I was like 6 or 7 years old. Our next door neighbor played at a church, and my mom was good friends with her, so I basically walked over there with my little Alfred book and took piano lessons for about 3 to 5 years, I think. Then I got the brochure about our strings program when I was about 10 years old, I think 4th grade, and my mom asked if I was interested in that, and I said, yeah, sure, we'll go for it.
Yeah. By our, you mean Opuses?
No, this was just the local.
Yeah.
My local schools didn't have it in, especially in junior high at the time, and I think when I was that age, even though I wasn't in high school, I knew that the high school didn't have it. I did that for 3 years. I was in that program and quickly started taking private lessons. Started taking it a bit more seriously pretty early on. I won't say like I got really good really quickly because it was a lot of work, but I took it very seriously early on, and that kind of got me the head start I needed to get better and really make it something I like to do. And then 3 years after that, when I was about 13, I started taking guitar lessons, mostly just for fun. And once I got to high school, I started taking classical guitar, started taking that seriously. And eventually when I got to college, I took violin and guitar, kind of a dual primary instruments, and ended up with a BA in music with a minor in computer science.
With a minor in computer science. We're definitely going to touch on that because that fascinates me. Scott, I had no idea, first of all, that you started on piano. I feel like a terrible friend. And that I knew you played guitar, but like classically trained, I had no idea.
Yeah.
So what would you say is your primary currently? If you had to sit down and say, today I'm going to practice, which one is your inclination to pick up?
I would say violin. A lot of that has to do with later in my college career, doing both and having both as a primary was a little bit too much to handle. Some people can handle it fine, but I get kind of laser focused. I kind of put blinders on when I start really getting into something. So, when I would do well at one, the other would suffer. So I kind of chose violin because I felt with the opportunities I had at the time and the resources available to me, that was, that had the most resources available to me was my violin. The teachers were a little bit better and a little bit more knowledgeable and able to give me a better education at that specific time, as opposed to, the guitar opportunities were good, but just not as good.
Scott, that's awesome. Really, really, really. So next question I have, how long have you been involved in Opus, and sort of how you got involved? Did you start as a camper or come in as a TA, all that fun stuff?
Sure. I got started in Opus a long, long time ago. I think it was like 2007 or 2006, somewhere around then. So yeah, I've been involved with Opus longer than many of our campers have been alive.
Yeah, probably been alive.
Yeah.
Wow.
Um, yeah, that's around when I first started being a camper. I was a camper for I think a total of 4 or 5 years. I think 5 years. There was one year when I couldn't do it. There was one summer I wasn't able to do Opus. Um, but yeah, I was camper for 4 or 5 years, and then I've been a TA in some capacity, whether that's um, just being a regular TA or a lead TA or just kind of like coming in to help a little bit. I've been doing that in some capacity since then. So I think since like 2012.
That's awesome. When did you first become lead TA? And then I'm going to turn that around and ask you about your computer science background because I know you're also pretty much the IT TA.
Sort of, yeah. Yeah, kind of. So yeah, I first became lead TA. I think about 2 or 3 years. My third year as a TA, I think I was a lead TA. Around that time was when a lot of you can kind of call it the old guard was shifting a little bit. So there were a lot of people who have been involved in like a TA and administrative capacity who were now moving on to other things, and so um, there were all these positions open for kind of a new generation, a new crop of leaders in the this level of the organization. Um, Linda had known me for a long time. Me and Linda have always gotten along. Linda and my mom got along wonderfully. They loved each other. They were great friends. Um, so, Linda decided to give me that opportunity. And I think actually that first year, I wasn't lead TA by myself. It was actually myself, Brandon Shepard, and Ryan. We were
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
we were all kind of like triple teaming the lead TA position. Um, Again, because a lot of the old guard was moving on, there were a lot more things that were a little more open to interpretation in terms of whose responsibility, who has what responsibilities. So it kind of seemed overwhelming for a lot of people at first. So Linda had us kind of split up those responsibilities. I forget how she split them up, but um, yeah, I think I was like overall lead, so
Yeah.
I kind of had the final say on most things. But yeah, that's and then I was lead TA all the way up until um, I graduated college before I stopped taking any classes. So that was 2018, I think, or 2017, I think, when I stopped being a full on TA.
Yeah, we really missed it. Well, let's go back. So you just mentioned graduating college. You have
Hmm.
a minor in computer science,
That's
right?
correct.
Okay.
Yep,
Kind of,
from North Central College.
hey, nice. So what kind of sparked that? You played violin for a long time and you're like, man, it's the greatest instrument of all time. And then you're like, but you know what? Computers are great too. So have you always had an interest in computers or what's kind of your background with that stuff?
Yeah, computers have always been something that's been a part of my life. My dad has been working in computers since the late 70s. So, back in the day when the only way to talk to a computer wasn't through a keyboard or wasn't through, Siri or OK Google, it was by, getting a bunch of punch cards, punching in your program in binary and feeding them into a machine. Um, that's how long my dad's been in computers, and so we always had computers around the house. Uh, for people who are from that generation, we had Amiga computers, we had a Commodore 64, a CDTV, and all these things up until a few years ago were in our basement and still functional. So
Oh my
um,
God.
yeah, so most people listening to this probably won't know any of those words, but people in the know will have that nostalgia moment when they hear
They'll
this.
know.
Um, but yeah, so that's always been something that it's always been around me, and it's always been kind of something that I don't want to say I was skilled at, but something I kind of had I had an intuition for.
Yeah. Hey, definitely. So what do you currently do now as your main job?
Sure. Right now, I am a quote unquote genius at Apple Orland Square.
An
um,
Apple genius.
yes, my official title is genius, and I've been with Apple for uh, 2.5 years now.
How do you get to become a genius? Because that's something I've literally tried to become for the past 15 years of my life. And it seems like you just kind of stumbled upon it and they just slapped you with that title, which doesn't seem fair.
It was a lot of hard work. You don't come in starting at genius. You have to work your way up. You have to prove yourself, both technically and in terms of like interpersonal skills, those soft skills. It's a lot of work, but if you can get in an Apple and you can, you know, you know, be really diligent with your work, take criticism,
Yeah, man.
and you can get there.
Nice. All the steps to being certified genius.
Yeah, a
Well,
lot of the being, getting to a certified genius and being a good musician has a lot of parallels, especially that taking criticism well. You can
yeah,
take criticism well as a musician, you can be a genius.
that's totally true. Still working on that. Now, I'm also part of this podcast. We are looking for the best practice techniques of all time. So I'm
Hmm.
throwing this at you out of left field to try to get your gut reaction. When I say, Scott, you're sitting down, you have 30 minutes to practice, you got to make it good. What are some of the techniques you're going to use? Best practice session.
Yeah. The best way to practice is with a goal oriented mindset. Um,
Ooh.
don't set a timer. If you only have 30 minutes, you only have 30 minutes. That's fine. But
Mhm.
don't set a timer and limit yourself to 30 minutes. Set a goal. Say, I'm going to perform this action this many times perfectly. I'm going to play this scale perfectly in tune 3 times in a row, 10 times in a row, whatever it is. I'm going to play this piece. I'm gonna sight read this piece. That's a goal. That's a fine goal. I'm going to work on this measure this many times, and I'm going to listen for my intonation on this note. Um, Having those goals in mind is what's going to make you really listen instead of just go through the motions. You're going to listen to what you're doing. You're going to make the adjustments you need to make, and you're going to become more in tune with your instrument. Pun intentional.
I wasn't going to say anything. Scott, that's absolutely genius, I have to say. That's a very, very. I've heard other practice techniques before, and that's a good one that I'm going to have to remember and definitely do myself. Well, I really want to thank you again for sitting down and walking through a couple of fun things here. We learned a lot about you, man. And for anyone that doesn't know Scott, since he unfortunately took a step back for like the past year or past 2 years, he is an awesome, fun guy. And he's full of stories. He has an amazing dog, which we didn't hear about. Oh, what's your dog's name?
My dog's name is Barney.
Barney.
He's an Irish Wolfhound. So
Oh my God.
um, he's 5 months old, and he's probably, last time we weighed in, it was about a month ago. He was 80 pounds, so he's probably close to 100 pounds
Whoa.
now.
A
Yeah, he'll be
5 month
about.
dog.
Yeah, so imagine, your tiny little puppy, but literally 5 times bigger. He'll probably be about 180 pounds when he's full grown.
Oh my, wow.
Yeah.
180 pounds.
Yep. They
That
are the tallest dog breed in the world on average.
that is 20 pounds a month if he's
Hmm.
5 months old and 100 pounds already. That's
Yeah.
insane.
He's gaining about a pound a day right now. No, not even. I did the math. He's gaining about a pound a day.
Pound a day. Great for the holidays. It's probably going to be us in like the next 2 weeks. Well,
Exactly.
thank you again, Scott. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been episode 4 of the wonderful Magnum OPUS Podcast. Scott Mitchell on the line. And join us next week for another surprising podcast. I won't tell you what it is. You'll just have to see. Thank you, everybody.